What's up, guys? So in today's video, we're actually going to be talking about how you can go about healing relationships by using the work by a phenomenal woman called Byron Katie. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard of Byron Katie, but she has this amazing approach to learning how to dispel negative beliefs by looking into yourself, by really going within, by managing your own energy field, so to speak, your own thoughts, your own attitudes, your beliefs. And by doing so, you learn how to open up your perspective. You learn how to address things in a different way, to see things in a different light. And by doing so, by doing this work on yourself, you can then, as I would like to put it, shift your energy field, change the dynamics in your relationships, and learn how to heal those relationships by healing yourself, by healing your own attitudes, by letting go of that kind of old identity, that old way of thinking of things, and by opening yourself up to a new possibility and therefore stepping into a different reality. This also links to Neville Goddard's "Everyone is You" pushed out, by noticing what this person that you may be having a conflict with is bringing to you. You open up yourself to recognizing your own inner wounds, and then you go through the process of challenging and looking into these beliefs that surround this wound in order to bring yourself into a deeper level of realization. In today's video, we're going to be using the work by Byron Katie. I'm going to be putting all of these things down in the description so that you can have a look at it for yourself, so that you can apply the work to your own life on a daily basis. So we're going to be looking at tips and techniques of how we can apply this to our lives and make a difference to our relationships. Let's get into it. So what is the work exactly? What Byron Katie's done is that she's put these 4 powerful questions on a sheet for you so that you can kind of work through your own feelings, what your needs are, what your wants are, what you believe the other person should or should not have done, and what you would like to happen in the future. So one of the first questions is is it true? So let's say you have this idea about a person, there's something that always seems to pop up between you and this person, something that you always feel that creates anxiety within you. You question the thought by saying, is it true? That's question number 1. And then you move on to question number 2, which is it absolutely true? When you really start to think about whether this thing is absolutely true, this means that there can be no other truth. There can be no other way of looking at this. This must be the absolute truth. So when you question it again, when you move on to the second question, is it absolutely true? It opens you up to kind of, allow some more possibilities into your thought process. Once you've moved from question 2, you go on to question 3, which is, how do you react when you believe the thought? And in this space, what we do is we look at how we react physically first. Are there any physical reactions that occur within us? Do we feel any tightness in our chest, in our throats? Do our arms stiffen up? Do we feel anything in our stomachs? Anywhere in your body. So you kind of do a body scan. And when we ask these questions, my loves, we're actually meditating on each question. So it should take some time, because we get into stillness and we really engage with ourselves so that we can feel what it is that we are trying to tell ourselves. So we sit in this space and we feel this on a physical level. Once we've ascertained what the feeling is, then we move on to, what did you think actually with this? When you had this thought, what were you thinking about the thought? And then you question that, you dissect that, you go into that. I thought this person was treating me this way. I felt like this person was doing this to me, etc., etc. Once you've done that, then you move on to the emotions that were stirred inside of you. Did you feel, was it hurt? Was it sadness? Was it anger and vexation? Was it frustration? Did you feel anxiety? Did you feel a deep sadness? What did you feel? What was your emotional body telling you? And then you move into what your behaviors were. Did you withdraw from the person? Did you react in an explosive way? When we start to look into this third question, then we start to see how we respond, how we become in this space. And so we turn the spotlight away almost from what the person is doing to us onto how we are reacting to what we think is being done. Moving from that space, we go on to question number 4, which is, who would you be without the thought? How would you behave without the thought? How would you feel without the thought? I would feel calm, I would feel relaxed. I wouldn't feel bothered, I would feel peaceful, I would be open, I wouldn't withdraw, I would stay open to this person. Now, by using the work in your relationships, it's not about you suppressing how you feel, not at all. In fact, it's about really illuminating how you feel and then processing how you feel in a healthier way. By doing so, what this actually ends up doing for us is it ends up allowing us to look at ourselves so that we become the point of attraction, so that we can see what it is that we are drawing into ourselves. For example, if there's somebody in your life that always seems to open up a wound for you, what is this really indicating to you? It's indicating that there is a soft spot in a particular area of your life. And what that means is that you may end up having thoughts around this soft spot that try to protect the wound. The ego always does this. It tries to protect your wound. So think about it as if you have a physical wound on your body. When you have a physical wound on your body, the muscles and the tissues all around the wound may tense up in order to protect the wound. A similar thing happens with your emotional body when it comes to your ego. When there's an emotional wound that's happening within you in your emotional body, your ego tenses up. Your ego gets really, really tight. And it then circulates this wound with lots and lots of thoughts because it's trying to protect the wound. That's its job. That's what it's trying to do. And so we can look at that now and say, okay, this person is touching this wound. But what this is showing me is that this wound is still really there and there's some more work that needs to be done. And this is where we can kind of lean into everyone is you pushed out, because that person is just reflecting back to you what it is that you need to look at. And before I forget, my loves, one of the last steps is to flip the thought around. So how can we really apply this work to our lives? What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to give you guys a real life example of what I did and how I use this work in my everyday life. So my partner is different to me in how he expresses himself. I am generally quite gently spoken, I'm really careful about the words that I use. I really think about what it is that I say before I say it, etc. My partner's a little bit more brash, he's a little bit more out there with how he expresses himself. And for the longest time, it was actually a point of contention for me in particular, not for him, but for me. I was just like, why can't he just, speak to me nicer? Why can't he just be more gentle in his approach? He's always so harsh with me. That's what it became. The thought was, he's always so harsh with me. And so that began to reflect itself in my attitude, because it became somewhat of a belief, because it was a thought that I kept thinking about him. So I used the work. So with the first question, is it true? He's always so rough with me. At the time when I answered, I said, yes, he is. He's always so rough with me. Oh my God, he's just always against me. I had to also question how old this idea was. How old was this idea? And it reminded me of a time when I was very, very young and I went through a lot of bullying when I was a small child. And that's what it reminded me of. So him being the way that he is and expresses himself actually stirred up an old wound within me that I didn't realize was still there, playing itself out in my everyday relationships. This is why it was such a point of contention for me. So it's often good to question, how old is this? Can you think back with yourself to see, was there another time when you felt this way? When was it? How old is it? Etc. So my first answer was yes, it's true. Then I questioned it again. Is it absolutely true that he is always rough with you? He's always like this with you? And I really had to sit in this space, my loves, and meditate on this, because then what I realized was no, he's not always this way. Not at all. Nobody's always any kind of way. So then that opened my mind up to some more possibilities, and I began to think to myself, well, no, he's actually very gentle with me at different times. And when he is in this expressive way, it's usually because he's trying to express something to me, because he's a very passionate person. So it's coming across, I'm filtering it through my ego because of the experience that I had when I was a child of being bullied. I'm filtering it through that, and then it then begins to feel like I'm being bullied. But actually, and then I make myself a victim, let's not leave that out. But actually, the truth is that he's just expressing himself in an extremely passionate way. This is one of the ways that he goes about expressing his ideas, his beliefs, and his thoughts. So then I moved on to question number 3. Who do I become? How do I react when I believe this thought that he is always rough with me? And then I had to really list out some of the behaviors that I have if I had any feelings in my body on a physical level. And I remember sometimes I would feel quite tight across my chest. That was my physical feeling. And I would also have these thoughts, which was, why is he mean? Why is he being mean to me? Again, making myself a victim and making him into the bully, something that I had already gone through as a young person. So repeating the same patterns. And then I had to question, what was the emotional response? And my emotional response was feeling scared. That was my emotional response. I felt scared, I felt frightened. And then I had to ask myself, what was my behavior like after that? And I would always withdraw from him. So I would build a wall between us and I would withdraw from him, because my ego told me this is the way to do it. This is how to keep myself safe. Once I'd listed those things out, I could really see them in front of me. And like Byron Katie says, we take it from the thoughts, we put it onto paper. And so that's what I did. And I looked at it on the paper and I thought, oh my goodness, wow. And it really illuminated a lot of things to me, especially for me to realize, I was like, my boyfriend is not a bully in any kind of way. He's just extremely passionate and expressive. But my ego, being based on a lot of the experiences that I've had, filters everything through that same perspective. And so he then becomes the bully, and I again assume the role as the victim, as I did when I was younger, when I went through bullying as a child. Then I moved on to question number 4. Who would I be without the thought that he was always harsh with me? Who would I be without it? And I realized I would be free, I would be open, I would be understanding, I would feel strong within myself because I'm not a victim. I would feel like I can hold my own. I would trust myself actually to hold my own. And I would love this man who is just expressing himself to me and accept him for who he is. Then I had to move on to the last section, which is always to flip the thought around. So we flip it around and we realize, and we say, okay, and we try different ideas on. He is always rough with me. How about I am always rough with him? I am always rough with him in my thoughts about him. My thoughts about him are rough. I am always rough with him. And I am being rough with myself. I am being rough with myself because I'm subjecting myself to this belief that isn't actually true. So am I treating myself kindly or am I treating myself roughly? By doing this type of work, as you can see, my loves, what it kind of does is it really flips the script so you can see that you pointing at the other person to say, you are doing this to me. You realize that there's a wound there, something that's been there from childhood, maybe something that has really affected you, and your ego goes around tightening up around it by circulating the thoughts, you always do this to me, and it becomes the always. So by doing the work, by going through these steps and doing the work, then we see what the truth is. Then we see what the truth actually is. I was being rough with him. I wasn't allowing him to express himself. I wasn't allowing him to really be him and just accepting him for who he is with love. And then what it allowed me to do was to see through the eyes of love, to see through the eyes of compassion and empathy, and to understand that I have a man that is very expressive and gets really passionate when he's doing so, and it's not about me. It's about him and how he likes to express. And so it allowed me to accept him as a person, and then our relationship became more cohesive and more enjoyable for both of us. So this was just a nice small little example of how you can actually use the work in your life. So, my loves, if there is something in your life that keeps showing up and there's a wound that keeps happening and there's somebody who you think is doing this to you, I encourage you to have a look at Byron Katie's The Work. Do a couple of her worksheets. Remember that this is going to take some time for you to actually work through, and move through each question gently and take your time with this. This is not a process for you to rush. Also, as you move through your day, you can have thoughts that pop up that you can actually do the work on yourself, and pair it up with some mindfulness, pair it up with some breath work and some techniques. I myself pair it up with meditating on what it is that I want to have in my life. So I go through a mental rehearsal each day of what it is that I want to have. So use this work alongside anything else that you do that provides you with calmness and stillness. That could be breath work, it could be being outside in nature, it could be meditation, it could be visualizations. And go through each step doing this work, and you will begin to see how it highlights to you the wounds that you may actually have in yourself, the beliefs that could still be running through you that you thought that you didn't have anymore, but are marring and coloring your perspective. And we want to be able to see through the eyes of love as much as we can, and have empathy and understanding for the people in our lives, and so cultivate and create better, healthier, happier relationships. If you need any help with this, my name is Sabrina Naayantara. I'm a holistic mindset coach. I myself am always putting myself through these types of different practices and techniques so that I can become a whole person, so that I can be the best version of myself, and therefore be a really, really good coach to the people that I work with. I trust that one of you, maybe many of you, found some use out of this video, some value. I really, really trust that you did. Let me know, like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, all of the good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next video.